And we're back. Welcome to
Oh,
Lightning Culture.
that was pretty good, man. It's like you were a late night radio DJ.
Uh huh.
You know, what's the character from Saturday Night Live, the Ladies Man? It's like you were
The ladies
channeling your
man.
best ladies man.
The ladies man. I like the way he talks. I was more of a fan of the Mad TV version, Funker Walker Dirty Talker. Not Funker. And that was not a curse word. I literally said Funker Walker.
If
Uh,
anything, it
no,
would have been on you. If you would have cursed, it would have been on your own live stream. I cursed on mine last night.
no, it was Funky Walker Dirty Talker, and it was played by oh my God, what is his name? Famous voice actor did the voice of Green Lantern
Phil
in
Lamar,
Phil Lamar.
is that
Who-
that's it, right?
Yeah, Phil
Um,
Lamar was I don't know if he was a straight up stand up comedian or if he was just a sketch comic for years before he started doing voice acting. He also, if I remember right, was the guy who gets shot in the face in Pulp Fiction.
yes.
So, but anyway, so speaking of voice acting, well, I guess we should start with a couple things. Number one is Travis Emo,
Hey, it's good to be back again to
world
do
famous
these.
artist, man of mystery and luxury and sexiness.
Yeah.
I don't know where I was going with that.
I don't know, but you had to dig yourself out.
Also, so two sponsors for today's episode. The first sponsor would be Showcase Comics, and I'm gonna try and put like a little graphic, just slide it in here, right here, while we're talking about
That's what
Showcase
she said.
Comics in Slidell, owned by Mr. Tim Stoddard and his family, and he is generously providing us with the subject of this episode, which is going to be, well, you can figure it out if you, I mean, if you can't read, then that's a whole different set of problems. We're talking
I
about
just
nudity.
like looking at the pictures.
I do too. Um, Especially when they're nudie books. Anyway, I'm old enough to
Showcase comics, boys and girls.
Stoder won't care.
This is
Yeah,
like the
no, show.
worst ad. This is like we've talked about in podcasts where they have really bad ad reads. Oh
First,
man, how could ad reading be so hard? It's so easy.
but our first sponsor is pornography. Anyway, no, Showcase Comics, great comic shop, absolutely fantastic. If you're in the Gulf South, head out to Slidell. Tell Tim Stoddard that you heard about him through us and that we talked about pornography during his ad read. Uh,
You'll see. Actually, that'll be pretty normal for him. That's how normal people find his shop.
Should I cut this out?
I don't. Well, cut out the joke or cut it, or cut it out like Tim Allen or no. What is it? From Full House. Cut it out.
Yeah, no, I know.
You can cut that part
You're,
out.
you're talking about. You're not talking. Did you say Tim Allen? You're talking about
Yeah,
Dave.
it's Tim Allen.
Dave
Oh boy.
Coulier.
Same thing.
Cut
Same
it
person.
out. Yeah, no, he. That was his. He didn't come up. I mean, he came up with that himself. That was his shtick when he did comedy. Oh my god. Moving on from Showcase Comics with that wonderful ad read, the other sponsor is technically me. So I am doing a photography book about New Orleans during the lockdown, during the quarantine, pandemic,
And
whatever
just
you want to
just
call
to
it.
be clear, this has nothing to do with pornography. This one has
No,
nothing to do.
no, part of me wishes it did. It'd probably be getting a lot more steam on Kickstarter right now. Uh, sometimes I wonder why I'm not successful, and then every once in a while I'm like, oh yeah, that's why.
You gotta
Uh,
replay these ad reads and be like, "This is why."
this is the best part of the show too, isn't it? No, but I'm doing. It's a serious project. I'm doing a photography book. I'm gonna leave a link to the Kickstarter down below. I'm trying to reach a goal of $10,000 by August 6th, and you can see some of the photos in the description in the video. Uh, it's a project that actually Travis suggested. It was his idea. I mean, I was already taking the photos, but it was his idea to do a book. And but yeah, so I hope you'll check it out. And you can actually see some of my photography to my right here. Two of my godsons. Uh, so in any case, actually you can't see it very well because on my screen I'm this big. But anyway, all right. So today's episode is obviously art convos. I think every show should be like this. I think we should just start talking about nudies uh, during
What?
so, so today's episode, we're going to be talking about you can see it on the screen, the artist edition of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and this is, a lot of people are familiar with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but they're not necessarily familiar with the basics of them, if that's the right word,
Yeah.
like the origins and all that. Like so it's funny. We'll tell the story really quickly because you didn't realize this, and I think a lot of people didn't. So Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles started off to a degree. I don't think you would call it a full on parody of Daredevil, but it is chock full of Daredevil references.
Yeah.
So, for instance, like you did know this part that the mutagen that covers the turtles that turns them into the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is supposed to be the mutagen or the chemicals that get into Matt Murdock's eyes as a child that turn him in, give him his powers and blind him. Um, but
Yeah.
but along with that, there's a bunch of references. So the Foot Clan is a reference to the Marvel Ninja assassin association called the Hand. So the foot, the hand. Um, you have Splinter. His obviously a smaller version of a Stick, and Stick is the ninja master who trained Daredevil. And I think there's other references as well, but
Oh,
it's
there is. I did a little research, a little show prep before this for me. Something I actually should have realized and put it together, and you can actually see it on the cover here. So because of Daredevil, they were also Frank Miller fans, and by they I mean Eastman and Laird.
mm-hmm.
Were fan of Frank Miller, and also at this time Ronin was coming out, and Ronin was a book that Frank Miller did
Yeah, it's not as
through
well known.
DC.
Yeah.
It's not as well known, but the logo, if you look at the logo, and if you were to Google search real quick for Ronin, they actually had a similar trade dress, and almost this, maybe the inking style too, is kind of familiar, like similar. Sorry, not familiar, similar to that.
Right, right.
So
No,
yeah,
you
so
can
they were
definitely see
definitely
that.
inspired by like Daredevil, the Daredevil run from Frank Miller, and also Ronin, because that was kind of contemporary to them at the time.
I think the I think the version of the Ninja Turtles that's most well known is probably the different cartoons.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is like, and you can tell this from the cover of the artist edition that they took something that was very Frank Miller esque and made it like I mean honestly it's grittier than Frank Miller. It's not really Frank Miller esque is wrong is isn't even the right word. It's a lot grittier than that.
This is a lot looser too.
But somebody, I guess, liked the name Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and turned it into a Saturday morning cartoon, or maybe it was an afternoon cartoon. I can't remember when it came
So
out.
did you ever see the Toys That Made Us yet?
About Ninja Turtles?
Yeah.
No, no, I didn't.
So if anyone's out there, if you haven't checked out Toys That Made Us, definitely do. They actually have a big backstory to how it got picked up licensed wise, and how they came up with the idea for it. And in terms of the licensing, there was just this random guy who was starting up his own management company, and he basically got the was going to help them um, sell the license for the toys, and the toys ended up turning into a cartoon. And I'm probably doing a horrible job explaining, but definitely check that out. You should too, Adam. You'd probably enjoy that because they cover how it got picked up, how it went to a movie, and also talking, of course, about the Playmates toys, which is the primary reason it's in the Toys That Made Us.
Right. Well, let's start. It's interesting looking at this cover. So I guess I should mention that the what's interesting about this artist edition is that it takes you through. I believe it's the first issue, maybe it might have been the first couple of issues, and does it um, in three different dimensions. So it does starts with the basic pencils, and we'll see later on. You can see that they're writing notes in the margins and the gutters.
Mm-hmm.
And then it goes to inks, and then it goes to what we'll talk about later, grayscale. Because this is not, what I was going for is like the idea that like look at how like gritty and black and white this is, and then in the cartoon, the cartoons, the version people are most familiar with, are these bright, bombastic colors. It's a polar opposite. Um, but if anyone's ever seen Travis's channel when he's doing the sketcher cards, you can see a lot of the techniques that you use on this cover.
Yeah,
Particularly like using the white lines for contour and
I think the most obvious is, going. I'm going to the second one where it says at the bottom, "Do all very Ronin," and that's funny because there's that Ronin reference. But basically, just as would be a breakdown, like a thumbnail sketch that I would do for a comic book page, very similar to one I would do, and you're just kind of getting your composition together. They're also figuring out probably where they're going to spot the blacks, it's in terms of large areas of black ink that they're going to lay down in there. You can see around the turtles and everything. So really, the same process a lot of other artists or professional artists use.
what I find we'll get further in. So we're looking at the first page right now. What's interesting to me is like the sometimes there's attention to detail, and then sometimes there's not. Like the top left panel, it's not totally detailed, but they put some effort into it. And then with the splash, which is well, it's not a splash technically, but the larger panel, they just kind of sketch it. That really looks like a thumbnail. That's what a thumbnail looks like.
Yeah.
Just the basic poses and structures, and I mean, I don't know how you do it, but I mean, I would assume that like this wasn't used as an outline. This was just what they started with, and then they would use another page to actually illustrate.
Yeah, I mean they would. I mean, if what you're saying, if I'm interpreting it right, what they would do is they do a bunch of different versions of these on a sheet of paper, and they would be very small. I mean, like I wish I had something for scale, but almost like the size of a very small notepad. You would want it to be that small. You don't need to draw these large, and then they would take that and kind of use as a reference and draw it on a bigger piece of paper. 11 by 17 Bristol board and do it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So the second page, and you mentioned the scale. I am curious as to like, so this one the parts of this splash, this double page splash, have a little bit more detail in it. I'm curious if this was designed as a larger thumbnail or because I mean the book it's kind of hard to give you the scale of the artist edition, but it's obviously pretty large, So I am curious as to like I guess maybe they photoshopped it and maybe used vector or something like that to
Yeah,
expand
they
it.
might have made that particular one bigger. I mean, it just depends on how they work. You don't have to do those small size, but typically they're usually done at a small size.
Hmm. Um. So yeah, and so this next page you actually see a lot more of what would become but again these are probably just thumbnails. Some of the panels, one of the I guess that's a Foot Clan member in
Yeah.
the third panel, I guess. But you see like they go into a lot more detail here to and there's a lot, especially that top left corner. There's definitely like real storytelling going on despite the fact that these are thumbnails.
Yeah, it's actually really it's a lot tighter in terms of how much details in it for a thumbnail sketch.
And down at the bottom it says work on punch head through crate question mark a la Kirby, meaning Jack the King Kirby.
And what's interesting, I skipped ahead a little bit and looked at the ink version. that thumbnail is actually almost to me better than the actual inked page. It's a little bit more interesting to look at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We'll get to those in a minute. But yes, when and bear in mind that the when we get to the inked pages, that isn't finished product. Um, but so the next page, which says 19 Age of Yoshi, which I believe is that Shredder's first name? I can't remember what his
I think so.
I think so. So um and Kevin Eastman writes his name on everything. I guess they kind of figured this would be important, but um yeah, there is a charm to these pencils that
Yeah.
even with the finished product, which looks good once they apply the grayscale, some of these pages, and obviously they're not finished. If you look at the top panel,
Yeah.
like those are the building blocks of heads. You can see the cross patterns for where the eyes would be in relation to the mouth and all that. Um, but particularly the one of, I'm assuming, again, the shredder kneeling before his or bowing before his master, whatever you would call it, and the shadows of the different ninja behind them. Like, that's a really great little panel, despite the fact that it's just like an outline with some pencils used for shadow.
Yeah, it's still really cool. I think um actually, yeah, like I said, there's so much character in there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a sucker for behind the scenes things like this. So we've talked about it before, especially in this artist edition. I'm really glad they have these in here. I wasn't expecting it, to be honest.
I really like the propaganda poster with foot in the bottom right corner.
Oh yeah. Did you send the finished version of this one, by the way, or is it just this one?
Wait,
In
what?
terms of you have the thumbnail of this one. Did you
So
also?
no, I didn't. I just really flipped through
Okay.
and found what I found, like panels that I found interesting. And
Yeah.
later on I realized, like, oh, I should have gone through each individual page, because there were some pages that I really wish I had seen the finished product. And for instance, the next page is probably a good example of that. This very detailed thumbnail of a major battle scene between the turtles and the foot.
I almost feel like this had to be a bigger sheet of paper that they use because all the detail on there does not look like something that's been blown up like in a Xerox or something or
Mm-hmm.
scaled up in Photoshop. It doesn't look like something like that. It looks like it could
Well,
have been a big piece
per-
of like a big sheet of newsprint or something.
well, particularly when you look at the shading with the pencils, the where they're probably using the side of the pencil
Yeah.
to fill in the spaces. But this is such a beautiful page, and I guess I often wonder, like, is it different for people like you and me that have an appreciation for the basic art of well, art and storytelling, because so for instance, you can see Donatello on the right hand side, and there's a stray line crossed through his face,
Hmm.
and it's obviously very sloppy because it's just pencils and thumbnails. But um, I feel like I wonder, do regular people or people who haven't been studying comic book art for however long you and I have both been studying it, like, do they have the same appreciation for something like this?
It's tough to tell. It's tough to say because sometimes people who um, don't work in illustration or not like in terms of artistic in terms of like drawing or something like that, they'll appreciate drawing a lot more in general. Like when they see anything, it's like, oh, that's cool, because they're usually comparing it against themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and they would still be impressed with this if I still am.
Okay, going on to the next one. Again, like, what I love is, like, and it feels like as we go
Yeah.
through the book, they just decided like let's just draw more of this. Eastman is the artist, correct? Laird was the writer.
I think Laird wrote it. I'm not sure on this because they would go back and forth and working with each other. Like one would pencil and then they ink the other's work, and they would flip flop
Okay,
like that.
right.
But since I'm seeing a lot of Eastman written on most of these pages, with the exception of this one, this is like one of the ones that doesn't say at the top.
Hmm.
But I'm gonna assume since it's so similar that it's probably Eastman and Laird was the one to go back and ink.
Um, but yeah, like as we go through it, it seems like more and more attention to detail is being, and maybe that's just the process. Like the first couple of pages were fairly simple, and then like a page like this, which is like a very up close shot of the turtles, like from the neck down with their various weapons. Which, the interesting thing about back then, like with these black and white or technically grayscale comics, was the only thing that you could identify a silent page, you could identify the turtles by was their weapons because you know, I believe their bandanas were red, right? All of them.
All of them were red, yes.
And I'm assuming the cartoon was what decided, like, okay, well, we kind of need to, differentiate them a little more than that.
Yeah.
Because I doubt.
Another thing. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead,
No,
Chris.
well, I think the cartoon also had like the first letter of their name on their buckles as well, and I don't think
Yeah.
that exists here.
Well, it makes it easy for kids to tell who's who, and they gave more distinct personalities as when they were getting to do this for the show. Another thing, it doesn't really show it in these sketches, but a lot of maybe you'll see it in the other art. They originally had tails in the comics, like a little stub,
Mm-hmm.
but they ended up looking like something completely different in silhouette. I don't know if you want me to say it on the stream right now,
I get what you're going
but
for.
they
I
brought that up in the Toys That Made Us because when they were transitioning, that was one of the things that they were going to
would
change is they wanted to add the color bandanas, and the original models had a little tail, and they're like that looks too phallic, so they took away their tails.
would you like me to say it too?
No, you're good. We're
That
good. We
that
moved
that might be
on.
the worst joke of the episode so far.
It's
um,
all downhill from here.
but you know, as much as like this is a very simplified art style that they're using, at least for these pencils in particular. But you can definitely see the underpinnings of like very well trained artists. Like the details in Shredder's eyes, and
Mm-hmm.
then just the choice to have the bottom panel look like that. That is very specific and intentional, and not every artist would think to have like an up close shot like that. So the next page is where we get to the actual inks and like a much cleaner look.
Yes.
Um, eh, I'm guessing you're right. This like it must have been whether Eastman was always the pencil or not. It must have been like the other would ink it. Because you can definitely see like a different focus here. Some of the line work is I'm trying to think of like who it reminds me of. Um, and I can't quite place it, but there's definitely like the influence of a very famous artist that's just it's not coming to me. Uh, you have anything to say about this particular page though?
This one I would say nothing really. There's a lot of what I'm noticing too. There's a lot of exposition in here too. That's kind of used in between the gutters.
Well,
Um,
you can definitely see the Frank Miller influence there.
yeah,
It's definitely written Dark Knight style.
yeah. And by exposition, I'm just talking about those for people that don't know, like the text in between those gutters on the top and in the middle. There, it's so much extra information that they're giving you. It's very similar to what Frank Miller's style is
Yeah,
at this time.
comics didn't have a lot of extraneous text box. Um, prior to Dark Knight Rises or Returns, excuse me, Dark Knight Returns came out just before Watchmen, but Frank Miller and Alan Moore both popularized, which I mean, it actually didn't really become a permanent fixture until the 2000s to do this sort of storytelling. Um, but but yeah, you can definitely see that like the Frank Miller influence. But it's an
Yeah.
attempt to combine novels with comic books, essentially.
Yeah, here's the good thing though about what they did with the exposition separate from the panels. That allows the panels to use the whole of the panel to do a lot of the fight scenes and focus on the action versus trying to cram in all that text to each individual panel.
That is true. A lot of times those text boxes would actually go on top of the artwork, which you know it's necessary for comic book creators to really work as a team because a lot of times a writer will create like this huge box of text and it's like okay, well, where's that going to go on top of the art? Like, do you want us to tell the story through the art, or do you want to write a novel? You know, which isn't an insult to art to writers, but it's just like you have to work as a team to because you want the pages to look good. People are buying comic books to be comic books, and a great story is a part of a successful, a huge part, like 50% of a successful comic. But if you mess up the art, you know, it's not really a comic book anymore. Um, I think this particular page I have a couple of versions of. Oh, this is the one from earlier, and
Yep.
so apparently I was wrong. That was not a well. I mean, it could be a member of the Foot Clan, but he's not wearing the Foot Clan garb in panel two.
Yeah.
Uh, but but the oh, this is Raphael. The Raphael in the left top left corner pretty much stays the same. It's almost I mean it's basically the you know a cleaner version of that thumbnail.
Yeah. However, there's certain things I liked in the thumbnail more than what I'm seeing here. Like the
Okay.
bottom panel is different in terms of the pose of the person getting punched. The person getting punched in the other one just had was a more of a side profile of their head getting, punched backwards. And to me has more momentum. This kind of gets lost to me if I'm going to be honest. Um, but it's still interesting to see. Also, the third technically it's the third panel. So the second from the top on the right hand side,
Mm-hmm.
if you look at the thumbnail, they actually drew in a little bit of a background, even in the thumbnail, and then completely left it out on this one. I don't know if they added in grayscale later. Um, I don't think that's in here.
So I
I don't
jumped
think
back
so.
to the pencils, and you're right. The bottom panel, which incidentally is specifically called out, like you need to work on that panel, the punch to the head, but it feels a little more. Yeah, the anatomy isn't great, to be honest with you,
Yeah,
on that panel, and the impact is felt a lot more in the pencils than in the thumbnail than the actual finished. But yeah,
yeah.
the
Also, I have no clue who's getting punched right now either.
well, it's definitely the guy in the second or third panel.
Where's their shotgun?
I guess he dropped it as he. I mean,
Yeah,
you know, you're right. It is bad storytelling, but like I
that's
said,
all I wanted.
the anatomy is
That's
really
all I
off.
wanted. I
to
just wanted to be right.
to insult Kevin Eastman.
I just wanted to be right. Yeah, suck it, Kevin Eastman.
So the next page, yeah, you know, these are much cleaner, and you can definitely, obviously, see a lot more once you've cleaned up the art. But there is a lot of charm that's missing in the inked version, you
Yeah.
know. And this page is gorgeous. They kept um, the body panel, the final panel that goes from the neck down.
Yeah.
Um, I also really like that top panel. There's a lot of great storytelling going on there.
You know what? I'm just kind of comparing the thumbnails in my head to this. And the top half is really good. But I
Hmm.
find again, it's something with the way the pencils look. Having seen that, if I didn't see the layouts, I probably wouldn't think anything of it and still be like, "This is an awesome page." But for some reason, when they had penciled it in and the way they made it looked a lot more powerful the way it was drawn in the thumbnail version versus this. Though just the
Hmm.
bottom panel, it looked more intimidating almost.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, no, I feel the same way. I do notice though in the finished version that you have the bottom panel. You do have like I said from the neck down, and then if you go two panels up, you get their heads, and it's that I think that's intentional,
yeah.
because it's pretty much from the neck down, with the exception of Michelangelo. Uh, Nothing really to say, to be honest, about the next page, except that I did want to point out, like, we're so used to Shredder being more menacing physically, and the way he's initially drawn is much more like what you would actually expect a ninja to be like a lot skinnier and able to move quickly. Um, because that armor would obviously impede a lot of, I mean, for one thing, in this day and age when we have to wear masks quite a
Yeah.
lot, like, how did he see anything? like I wear a mask and my hat quite often, and I have a very limited field of view. But yeah, I chose this panel specifically because I thought it was interesting. Like the original version of the Shredder was a lot more lithe, I guess would be the word I would use.
Yeah.
Uh, let's go on. So this is one of the pages that I did get two versions of. Later we'll see the grayscale. But I did want to also. Oh, Yoshi was not his name. It was Oroku Saki. I forgot about that. It's been years since I've been like a real Ninja Turtles fan.
Poser.
But I did want to mention like the brutality of this. Like
Yeah.
after they beat Shredder, Leonardo hands him his katana and he asks him to commit ritual suicide. So, which is
It's
pretty.
pretty dark.
But there's a lot of detail that I love here, like Shredder's scarred face, um, and again, like the panel design. You're not. They keep it really close for all of these scenes, like because sometimes like newer artists don't understand like that you want to have sort of a how would I put it? Like a cinematographer's eye when you're creating panels, because like you're choosing what to emphasize and all that, and like a more inexperienced artist would have, like, especially for the third panel, might have backed out more, back the camera out more, whereas you really don't see much of the Shredder except for just the back of his head, and you can see I guess it's Michelangelo. You just get him from the beak down. Uh, but in so it's just little choices that define an artist.
Hmm. Yeah, no, this is kind of an interesting page. Yeah, you see a lot of the detail that they put in. I mean, we're gonna see it soon when we go to the grayscale, how much actual effort they really put into this.
And here we go. This is the grayscale. I'm wondering if this is recreated though, because like that bottom panel looks digital.
So I have a theory about why that looks that way for you.
Okay.
Well, because if you look, they are using like an ink wash or a marker. So all that gray you see there, like on panel two, if you look on the foot of Michelangelo,
Mm-hmm.
you could see that looks like it was just painted there. Little basically you add water to ink and it kind of it basically dilutes it so you can do like a what's called a wash and get these gray tones that they're using. And if you look at the bottom panel, they I think they what they did is they did gray lines for that, and then they used this material called zipatone, because you can see if you zoom in for you, Adam, if you're curious what I'm saying, you can actually see there's like a dot matrix, like a little
Yeah,
dot.
I can see it. Yeah.
That's a screen a zipatone or a screen tone. So there's these sheets that come in there, come out, and they're really popular in manga. You if you've ever read manga, you've seen zipatone or screen tones, and they place that on top of the art, and it kind of adheres to the page, and you actually cut out what you don't want to be covered in the zipatone. You peel that away, and then you're left with your this cool zipatone texture.
I'm be
That's in the
honest.
background.
I don't like it, but that could be just because it sticks out as compared to the rest of the art.
Yeah, they
Because it's
use it sparingly in some of these. Like I'm seeing it. I honestly think they even laid some on top of the characters a little bit too, but it's hard to tell. Or maybe it might be even in the printing process now that I'm thinking about it. Because now it's in all of it. Now I zoomed all the way in. It might even just be a dot matrix from the original. I keep saying dot matrix, like people know what the f I'm talking about.
thank you for catching yourself, by the way.
Yeah, well, you're welcome. But I was thinking the printing process when they're converting it from grayscale to that could also be it. I might not be Zipatone. It's really hard to tell now because now I looked at the shells and you can kind of see the same texture. So it's very hard for me to kind of pick it out what it is.
Well, I mean, we're not going to arrive at a solution, so let's
Yeah,
move on. I do love this page though. I do think that that last panel would have been better without the zipatone, just because it just sticks out too much.
yeah,
But you see a lot more of the effect of the grayscale here, um, and I do prefer these panels in a lot of ways. I mean, I love the previous page. I think the lack of a background did sort of emphasize the action, but
yeah.
you know, this is a fully realized page that you can actually. It's a world, you know, like it's not just like a cool action scene.
Yeah, and I love. I mean, it's a lot. Again, a lot of detail, very gritty look to those buildings, and some they're climbing up on the next page.
Uh,
That's the one with Shredder. We are here.
that's the one I was talking about.
Okay, I was making sure we were all right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
No, it's great. You know what I love seeing, and this is if I have the chance to do, I still do it. Because I was told in a portfolio review for me, never do long vertical panels like on the most left. It's like it's very hard to read, and I disagree with that because or maybe it's just because I've been reading comics for so long. I know where to go start reading next.
One of the
But
most.
they're
I'm sorry.
Go
Go ahead.
ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say one of the most valuable pieces of and I'm sure you've heard it yourself, but in regards to photography, one of the best things I heard was you have to learn the rules so that you can know when to break them.
Hmm.
You know, because rules are made to be broken, but it's not an excuse to be lazy and not learn like the basics.
Yeah. Well, for this editor in particular, it wasn't that they honestly were they
Was
just pretty much anything I was trying that might be a little different they were not up for. So,
was this
but
the
going
guy that
back
spit
to
in your face?
yes, it was by
Okay,
accident.
screw that guy.
Yeah. But going back to what's going on at hand, really cool use of that grayscale. Also, the silhouettes. Um, it's interesting that they did it kind of twice. They used silhouettes kind of twice in a row for it, but it
Mm-hmm.
works. And really cool texture at the bottom, like where they kind of zoom out and Shredder, we are here. Very cool, kind of very dramatic look that they were going for in that last panel.
Yeah, the last panel in particular is interesting because, you know, in terms of any art, you know, whether it's photography, painting, comic books, whatever, there's a thing called negative space, and generally speaking, you don't want a lot of negative space, but clearly they're going for something in that particular panel. To be honest with you, I couldn't say what the reason was for the choice. Maybe they just thought it looked cool in their heads, and it is a cool panel. It just,
It is.
but all right, moving on to the next page, where you get to see
Oof.
Shredder impaled. Again, like this is a very not friendly for kids. Even though I wonder what the general age range was that was reading. It's probably teenagers, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Uh, that got turned into a phenomenon of children's programming. Um, but yeah, I don't have a lot to say about this page except that again the inking is really reminding me of an artist, and I wish it's driving me crazy. So, do you have anything to say about this particular page?
Um, for we're talking about the one where Shredder's getting stabbed, correct?
Yes.
Not really. However, I do like the action in here. Um, there's so much going on too. Like in terms of the camera work, because
Barry Windsor Smith is the person I was trying to think of.
oh, okay, okay.
Sorry, go on.
No, you did better than me. I was just saying it's just interesting how the camera, how they're working with the camera on here. Um, because like we've talked about comic book artists in general, and how you've mentioned it earlier about you have to be like cinematographers, and it's very interesting each shot that they get, especially
Yeah.
that last panel when they choose to zoom in. So one, you could see Shredder's impaled, but also you get that whole expression, and also that Leonardo draws him in close for it, and then delivers
hmm
that line. Very dramatic.
Um, yeah. Oftentimes, I don't know if people did this back in the day, but a lot of the artists that I know, including yourself, often refer to the view of the panel as the camera.
Hmm.
Um, but just out of curiosity, do you see what I mean about like again the pencils, the style itself doesn't look like Barry Windsor Smith, but some of the line work and the inking, I feel
I
like
can see that.
personally.
I can see that.
Next page, awesome fourth panel.
Yes.
Actually,
I
to be
mean
honest, all the
that.
all the panels here, this might be some of the best work we've seen so far.
Yeah. And that last one, it's we were talking about rules, and they're not really breaking any rules in this one, but one of the rules is, your most important panels should be the biggest on the page, and obviously panel 4 achieves that. It's is so iconic with them. And
Would
I'm
you say
assuming
that's
that
the
has to
most?
be the last, huh?
Would you say that's the most important panel though? Because like to me, the third panel probably, and I'm not arguing that this is by any stretch a bad choice, but if I were doing it, I'd say the third panel should probably be the widest.
Maybe without the text, it might appear that way, but I'm assuming if it had. Oh no, this is the final one with
Yeah, this is
text.
the
Okay, let's
final
see the
one.
no. Huh. Well, I don't know, man. You might be right on that one. It might just be because I love that last panel so much.
So suck it, Kevin Eastman. I told you.
Is that the title of this episode?
Suck it, Kevin Eastman. No.
I told you. It has to be the whole thing.
Particularly since, I just went to your finished Gambit uh, by accident. That was the next thing. I'll go back for a second, then we'll talk about the Gambit in a minute. But but yeah, I really enjoyed this artist edition. I wish there were more. And to be fair, I haven't seen that many artist editions because those are, if you're not familiar with it, folks, artist editions are done by IDW, as like they'll take a famous comic or famous artist and do giant recreations of their work, usually uncolored, so that you get uh, like the actual feel of what it looked like. In this case, obviously Eastman and Laird did their own. They were creating their own comic,
Yeah.
in a time when not that many people were doing create their own comics. to be honest with you. But I really liked the way that it broke down, and you got to see. My least favorite part, honestly, is just the inks without the grayscale.
Yeah, I mean, it loses something. And I think they're trying to get the quote unquote magic they had before in the thumbnails. Because what's interesting is when you have that grayscale or when you add color and shading and lighting to stuff, you're adding contrast. And that contrast is what makes something visually appealing to you. A lot of times when you just go from pencil to the inks, when you see the like just the regular inks, you kind of lose something sometimes depending on how it's inked. And when you're adding in these grayscale tones, you're adding a little bit more contrast in there. So that's probably one of the reasons you're liking it more.
Right. But yeah, I love them showing the process of making this comic from, again, thumbnail pencils, because technically there's a step missing, because it would be thumbnails, then straight up pencils, then inks, and then grayscale. Which, did we explain grayscale to people?
No, no, we did not.
Do you want to handle that? I mean, I could come up with a version of it, but you actually would have done it.
Well, grayscale, I think to put it more in layman's term, it's like black and white TV or like a black and white photograph. Instead of in color, you're going to get different ranges, different values of gray, different shades of black,
Mm-hmm.
essentially. And so that's what they're doing here, and they're basically um, referring more to printing for the printing side of things. Uh, Probably this was a cheaper way to print because full color is actually more expensive, or probably was more expensive around the time when this was getting printed. So they went with grayscale, and so it's a way to kind of add that contrast and add a little bit more to it without paying for full color.
Right on. I mean, it also would have been more work for them to do full
Yeah.
color as well. The only other famous, and probably the most famous grayscale comic, would be The Walking Dead.
No, for sure.
So before we end this, let me go back to that Gambit. So you have your own, if you've never seen other episodes of the show, Travis and I do a bunch of stuff on Lightning Culture, but this is technically my channel. But Travis has his own channel. We are not successful enough yet to have our own unique URL where you could just go,
Yeah.
youtube.com/Travis Hemel, Hymel. But yeah, we occasionally do live streams of because you do. Well, why don't you explain what you do instead of me explaining it?
So, one of these little, I guess, video series I do has a gimmick, and what the gimmick is that I take a bunch of, not a bunch, I take 90s trading cards and I draw an homage of my style, and either change up the pose a little bit, the costume, and just kind of draw it on a larger scale. So I might draw it like 2 to 3 times bigger. And then I film it, and I usually would just put out the video in the series. Lately, we've been doing more of the live streams, and Adam, of course, with me for those, and we kind of go back and forth. And Adam is great on having those shows because sometimes I get so wrapped up in drawing that I forget to talk. So that's one of the best things about having a co-host like Adam on that show.
Thank you. But this is so yesterday. Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if this is dropping today or tomorrow, but earlier
Or
this.
2 weeks or three. No, I'm kidding.
No. This is gonna come out pretty soon. Uh, so we did a live stream that was New Orleans focused because I wanted to talk about my photography project, the Kickstarter, which I didn't mention. The name of the book is "The Party Is Over in New Orleans on Lockdown," and so we decided to go with a New Orleans theme. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of characters that we could have chosen from that are referenced in New Orleans. We did discuss you doing Doctor, can't think of his name at the moment,
It was
from
a
Princess
bad
and the
guy from
Frog.
Princess and the Frog. Yeah.
Which the reason we didn't do it is because neither of us has seen that movie.
Yeah,
We're
and
from New
I feel
Orleans,
like,
so
yeah, well, I feel like if you do something like that, like if I was gonna do something from a movie, right?
mhm.
One of us at least should have seen the movie. At least
Right.
me if I'm drawing it.
Well, apparently they're changing the name of or changing the entire theme of Splash Mountain to Princess and the Frog from Song of the South, which I guess makes sense. Uh, oh, yeah, that's probably why they're doing it. Uh,
Yeah, oh, that's exactly why they're doing it.
I
But
just
I'll be
realized
honest
that.
with you, I didn't even realize that was connected. Never seen Song of the South, nor have I known it was even
Mm.
with it. I was never the biggest fan of Splash Mountain.
I like
Probably unpopular to say.
I like the ride Splash Mountain, but I'm gonna be honest with you, this is one I'm actually okay with them changing because I hate the music. Um,
That's why I don't like it.
and this isn't gonna get X-rated, but it's definitely gonna get a little more adult. There's a part of the the song because you can't really understand the lyrics, and as you're riding it, there's a part where Brer Bear is hung upside down, so you see his ass, and I can't understand the lyrics, but it sounds like pretty good. Show us your balls, and it's probably I'm probably the only person on earth who hears that when he sees that moment, but.
Probably.
But I absolutely hate the music to Splash Mountain. Even though I'm not in favor of just getting rid of old things just to get rid of them because of perception.
Yeah.
Um, I actually have two bottles of Aunt Jemima in my. Who, by the way, I don't know what the history is of Aunt Jemima, but it's just like a kindly looking black woman's face. Like I don't understand what's wrong with that. Like there's
Well, she
nothing.
doesn't have to make your syrup.
First of all, everyone should make me pancakes. But
Well,
anyway,
when you come to visit Colorado, I'll make sure to have the Mrs.
I
Buttersworth
thought you were
and
gonna make me some pancakes, but
yeah,
apparently
and
not.
pancakes and get the
Um,
syrup ready for you.
but anyway, so since neither of us have seen, we really got off track with that. Well, since neither of us have seen Princess and the Frog, you had suggested, even though I really like the design of the villain in that movie.
That's why I was like that. That's the only reason I like drawing like something that has a cool design to it, um, or creatures. I was talking about that last night. You know, something that'd be fun and creepy to draw because I have a feeling you could make him look really creepy and scary looking. I think that was the intent, right? Was if
I
you look at
feel
that
like we
character
should
design.
watch the movie just and do an episode about that. And speaking of which, you should please go if you're in YouTube now. Obviously, go in the search engine and put in Travis Hemel Hymel. You can also put in Draw a Card, which is the name of the series. Um,
You'll find it.
if you love comic book art, which I assume is why you're watching this, you can learn a lot more because like Travis actually breaks down how an artist, because he is an actual comic book artist. Um, but you
That I
can
need to start sharing more of is I need to take some more videos of me work because I work digitally, so I have to record off my tablet when I'm drawing on it.
yeah. So, but yeah, check out his channel and check out the other videos on here. Most of them feature
Yeah.
Travis, but not all of them. And I'm actually looking to do like find a few more people because there's a bunch of movie episodes that I want to do when I do my movie rewind. But so we're gonna end it here. We're at around an hour right now,
I think we're
and
good. I think it's pretty good. I think we said everything we needed to.
absolutely. And so check out Travis's channel, please. If you're at all interested, there's a bunch of different tiers for my Kickstarter. I'm very proud of the work that I did, and I do want to thank Travis publicly for coming up with the idea. So thank you.
Anytime, buddy. Anytime I could do your best thinking for you.
I just wish you had come up with it sooner, so I would have, like planned it all out better. But
And there it is, folks. There it is.
jerk. Anyway, all right, folks. Thank you, and I don't have a sign off, so check out. Uh,
this, this is
out
about as
Showcase
good as the
Comics.
ad read. That's about as good as the ad read, buddy.
Thanks,
And
Tim.
so long.